Dear Tom, thank you for being with us tonight, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so very much for that wonderful introduction, and thank you for letting me be here with you today to talk about this most important subject, peace. We have 7 areas of focus, but all of them contribute to the main focus, which is peace. And what I'd like to talk about today is how we can actually form peace in our own backyard. Many of us are blessed and fortunate enough to be able to travel the world, and as we do, work for others to help build peace. But I want everyone to know that peace is something we can live every day and do it in our local communities. And in that way, it actually wraps around the world. So I'd like to talk about a few examples of that here today. So when we get together, and I will be happy to answer any questions you have if you would chat, and then or shout them out, then I'll be able to take them. Well, what we would like to talk about today is the definition of positive peace. Give a couple examples how we can do service that will lead to world peace, even in our own local communities without having to travel. And then talk about what's going on in Istanbul in February, which is the 2025 Presidential Peace Conference. So, Rotary has a close relationship with the Institute for Economics and Peace, and it defines positive peace as the attitudes, institutions, and structures that create and sustain peaceful societies. So often in our world, when we think of peace, we think of it as the absence of war, the absence of conflict. But when we study peace, what we realize is peace is more than that. It's all of us working together, like our Rotary Vision Statement says, to bring forth opportunities around the world so that the conditions are right to have peace. So, in my local community, we saw that there is a refugee crisis, that people are being forced to migrate from their homes due to war and conflict. So, what we decided to do in our community was to bring 5 Rotary clubs together to form the Rotary Community Corps for the Afghan community in Minnesota. So we knew we had new neighbors and we're going to have new neighbors, and that those neighbors were many times forced to leave their home without any possessions, and they had to start a new life here in Minnesota. So, what is a Rotary Community Corps? It's something that we can do in all of our Rotary clubs and districts that doesn't cost a lot of money, but that we actually take Rotarians and the Rotarians work together with the group that needs to be served, and we work on serving that group together. So it's not just Rotarians, but it's Rotarians working with the community themselves that needs our help. So we started an RCC with 5 different Rotary clubs and our Veterans Club. And if you see that individual on the right, to the right of me, he escaped Afghanistan with his child. His wife wasn't able to escape. But the way he escaped was he actually had paperwork and he put it in a plastic bag and he sealed it and put it under his son's, where his son was sitting inside that child carrier. Um, he was not allowed, and no one was allowed to leave the country without paperwork, but the Taliban kept taking the paperwork. So, in order for him to escape, he had to have his paperwork ready. So, the child actually got his mat wet, from urine, and the Taliban wasn't going to touch the urine. So, he was able to get through 15 checkpoints to get out and eventually get safe to the United States. Now, today, he's an executive at Toro Company, which is a big company headquartered here in Minnesota that services golf courses and large institutions that need lawn care work and things like that. He's actually the individual that picks which equipment to send to which countries around the world. And he was one of the translators that helped us when we were first starting. So there's a lot of good benefits to forming a Rotary Community Corps. So first of all, when you start a Rotary Community Corps, what you need to do is you need to ask the people you are serving what they need. You can't just assume that they need just housing or just food or just clothing. You have to ask them what they need. So there were many corporations that we brought together, many organizations. So we started by meeting in a local community center where we brought in half Rotarians and half Afghan refugees, and we meet every other week. And now we have several hundred meeting every 2 weeks. Once every meeting, the Rotarians bring food, such as pizza or sandwiches. And then on every other meeting, the Afghan community brings local food from their district, like chicken and rice. So what we would do is we would pair up these individuals with whatever their need was. If they needed to enroll their children in school, we had superintendents there. Because Rotarians are very good at knowing the people in the area. You know, in my club, we have the mayor, we have city council people, we have a school board superintendent, we have a librarian. And you might say, well, Tom, what does a librarian have to do with creating positive peace around the world? Well, she was able to sign up the refugees for a library card so they would have internet so they could look for jobs. And then eventually, when they got jobs, then they would send money home. And it did help create peace around the world, not only in our community where they were living, but back home where they were sending monies to help those people. And when you do something like this, it elevates your Rotaract club and your Rotaract district in your area. You know, the local politicians see it, the business people see it, the businesses, small manufacturing businesses, the state and local governments, federal government, they all came. We even had our US House person who actually was downsizing his home and brought his furniture to be used by the Afghan refugees. So when we started this, we thought, well, we're going to grow Rotary in our area while we create peace because all these new refugee neighbors are going to join Rotary. And, you know, that was true, but we had an unexpected event happen that we didn't realize. Those 5 clubs had members in their clubs, like all of us do, that were drifting away from their club. They stopped coming to meetings, they stopped coming to socials and, you know, other activities. Well, when we started this new way to serve, this Rotary Community Corps, those members started coming back, and some of them started housing some of our refugees. So when we asked the refugees in our area, what's the number one thing we can do for you? It was a surprising answer. They said, we need to learn to drive. Because, you know, we were actually driving a bunch of them to their workplaces. They said, we need to learn to drive. But the driver's manual in our state wasn't translated into Pashtun and Dari. It was to other languages. So we had to translate it. And so we got a quote that was $21,000 to translate. Well, that was a lot of money for something when our clubs were already busy doing other service projects. So I asked for volunteers in our club, and that's a picture of my friend Peter, who on his first day of joining Rotary, I asked him to join. He was working for a hedge fund, and his hedge fund actually had software that would translate from Pashtun and Dari into English. So we worked with him, with his software from his company, and worked with the Afghan community to refine it. And all of a sudden, we had driver's license manuals that were in the language of the refugees. So in subsequent weeks, we started hearing stories of people being successful in passing the driver's license test. And then we found them vehicles. Then they got jobs. And Peter felt like he was a part of Rotary. If he would have just joined our Rotary Club, I'm sure he would have been just fine. But giving him the opportunity to serve the Afghan refugees in this way engaged him in a way that made him a true Rotarian. And now he's a very big part of our club in the district. But the most important thing you have to remember is when you're serving a group is you need to involve that group. You can't just assume you know what they need. You can't just assume you're giving them what they need. You have to involve them. And many refugees would come and join our program. Then when they got jobs, they got busy with their jobs and their families, and then they left. So we truly partnered with the Afghans so that they would do carpooling and stuff so they could come. So it's important to work with them and not just for them. And of course, they had lots of needs: education, transportation, employment, immigration law, because some of them needed to get registered to be citizens. But luckily, our Rotary clubs, we had attorneys, we had HR people, we had people that own manufacturing companies, we had people that own hotels. And these refugees, many of them had advanced degrees and were very intelligent, but they needed the opportunity to find a job. Um, so we helped them with all that. And we also gave them a feeling of that they were home. You know, it's nice to go into a group of people, meet new friends. Um, One particular story that I really liked was this gentleman here on the right of your screen. That's at my club. One of my friends, Alicia Schmidt, owned a landscaping company. This gentleman, actually from Afghanistan, had an advanced degree in landscape planning. And so she hired them, and it had a very successful relationship that was beneficial to all concerned. So that was just one example. The other example I want to give is a grant that I'm sponsoring along with my club, and it's called Hearts of Europe is the grant type. So this is a grant available in my country that actually allows you dollars to travel to these countries. Of course, we can't travel to Ukraine because there is a war going on there. But what we did is we got together with other clubs, raised some money, then our district contributed dollars, and then Rotary International, along with USAID, put in money so that we can actually buy curriculum that's being written in another part of our country and get it to Ukraine to physicians. And these physicians help people who have lost their children, either by natural childbirth or because of the war. And again, we don't have to travel to Ukraine to do that. And I know many people around the world are going to Poland and helping, do it that way too. But you can do it from your own backyard just by sponsoring grants. So one of the things that I'm really most excited about in this upcoming year, and President Stephanie is excited about, is actually the 2025 Presidential Peace Conference. And we have a wonderful committee, mostly made up of individuals in your area, from Istanbul, from Egypt, from Turkey, all over the world. And we have Shafak, who's actually on our call today, and he's head of this committee. But this committee has been working hard on the Presidential Peace Conference. And we decided, President Stephanie decided that this year she's only going to have one Presidential Peace Conference, and she chose to have it in Turkey. Why? Because we as Rotarians have a new Peace Center there. And we have our first cohort going through, and they'll be graduating end of February. So between February 20th and 22nd, we will have almost like a mini convention. So we'll have a welcome reception. We're actually inviting Peace Fellows to come back. We're inviting all 1,300 of them to come back. We're inviting our Rotary International directors. We're inviting our trustees. There'll be all kinds of plenary sessions, and we had hundreds of people apply to be plenary speakers and breakout speakers, and they chose the best of the best to present to you during the 2 days that this is going on. And the event will be not only in Turkish, but in Arabic, French, and English. And the themes that we decided on that will be explored is how do we have peace in this polarized world? We heard your DG from your wonderful district talk about all the conflict in the world. We're going to talk about how you deal with that. We're going to talk about technology, media, and how that affects peace building and how we can use new artificial intelligence and things like that. And we have Naveen, who is actually heading up a group of Rotarians from around the world to become the first Rotary Action Group for Artificial Intelligence. At the end of this month, it goes to the Programs Committee, and then hopefully from there it'll go to the board in October next month for a vote. But we'll be talking about all that. And most importantly, when we get to peace, how do we make it last? How do we make sure that it's going to be sustainable? And also, there's going to be excursions in addition to the learning that will include tours of Istanbul. And I'm super excited about doing that myself personally, Cappadocia, more. And we get to view the new Rotary Peace Center. And of course, meals will be included. And this is the date. And if you have any other questions, Shafak is head of that committee, and he's actually on the call, like I said, so he can answer any questions. And I am honored to stay on and answer any questions that you have, because we want you all to leave with the knowledge you came seeking here today. So thank you so much for letting me be a part of this program today.